tiny little rooms, huh?
Yeah.
There you are.
Hey, Kurt.
Hey, everybody.
So we're supposed to start right now, but I'm gonna give Mike one more minute to see if he joins at first.
Dude, how is that guy never on time? Never. I mean, he doesn't even fall into being on time once. It is unbelievable.
I sent multiple texts and emails, but basically, real quick, just for a rundown, I'm going to, start off the call with just a brief, kind of description of programming, and then I'll just open it up. And pretty much, the attendees are going to be media from all over the place, but I'll cue them up to you guys. Tell you who they are and who they're from, and we'll get through this. And
so Andrew, we stay in here together. We don't break off in each. Okay, so we're all in this together. Okay.
We're all in this together. So I'm going to pretty much right now going to say start webinar, and just be ready to go on my count.
Hey, Kurt, did you get tested yet today?
You know what, Mooch? Since I tested positive, I don't have to test.
Oh.
Because
I'm going to start now, guys.
There's a possibility of being positive for 90 days. Yeah. So it's it's a crapshoot anyways. And so I may have to for CBS and Westwood One, but not for the network.
Okay. I just went over there. It was like that quick.
Oh, good. All right, guys, we're going to start right now. So, thank you for joining us for today's media availability with NFL Network's Kurt Warner and Steve Mariucci. Hope to have Michael Irvin join us shortly. As a reminder, to ask a question, please utilize the raise hand function. Before we take questions, I wanted to provide a couple of programming notes regarding NFL Network Super Bowl week coverage. NFL Network provides more than 70 hours of live Super Bowl week coverage throughout the week from Tampa, Los Angeles, and various locations. On Super Bowl Sunday, NFL Network provides 11 hours of pregame and postgame coverage, beginning with an 8.5-hour edition of NFL Game Day Morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. For further details on NFL Network Super Bowl coverage, please follow at NFL Media on Twitter. With that, we will now begin the question portion of today's call. Again, if you wish to ask a question, please utilize the raised hand function. Our first question comes from David Melandra Jr. David, you may ask your question now.
Hey guys, thank you for taking time to do this. My first question is for both of you guys. I want to get your thoughts about with the Philadelphia Eagles, and in particular the new head coach and their quarterback situation.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay. I mean, obviously it's fascinating that you've got a guy in Carson Wentz that has played at an MVP level, but obviously was nowhere close to that last year. And, you have to sit back and wonder, okay, what's broken and how or can we fix it? Then you have a guy in Jalen Hurts that, came in and did some really good things and showed you that he can win and be a playmaker at this level. But I think there's a lot of questions with Jalen Hurts as well on what he can be consistently as a player. So even though we played well, they weren't winning some of those games. And for both of those guys, there was issues around them. So it's a fascinating situation that it seems very much like Philly is committed to Carson in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, they've got the big contract there. So I fully would not be surprised if this thing becomes a competition, and I wouldn't be fully surprised if Carson Wentz became the starter again in Philly because of a number of different issues. And if they can clean him up and get him back to what he's been at other times in his career. I mean, been to the playoffs, obviously, like I said, the MVP season, but even a year ago, what he did with all the injuries to bring his team back and win late in the season to get them into the playoffs. He's done some really good things in this league. And I think the Phillies approach is simply, okay, we got away from whatever made Carson good. And he was pressing and had a bad year last year, but we don't believe that's who Carson Wentz is. So I fully expect this to be an open competition. And I could see either one of these guys being the starter for Philly next year.
Well, this whole situation kind of was interesting to watch this season. With, are they going to change quarterbacks? Are they not going to change quarterbacks? Is Doug Peterson going to stay there? Is he going to be gone? And it's been an interesting several years in Philly to me, because personally, I know the coaches that had been there, and Andy Reid had been there, and he was very successful and not there anymore. And Doug Peterson, of course, Doug was a backup quarterback for me at the Packers. And of course he won a Super Bowl, and now he's not there anymore. So they've got a bit of a revolving door there, and they're looking for perfection, and maybe they deserve it. And Howie Roseman's put together a nice roster. If they got to stay healthy, obviously. But I got to know Jalen Hurts before the draft, and I love the kid, and I know Carson Wentz as well. But I was thinking, in fact, Kurt, we mentioned that we talked about this a lot on the air. I thought it would be good for Carson Wentz to get a new start someplace else, like Ryan Tannehill did, and just go to another team and start over, and without looking over your shoulder and all of that thing. And I thought Jalen Hurts is good enough to start in the National Football League. So when you have, what did John Madden say? When you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. Well, I don't know about all that, but I think they're both good enough to start. And I would hate to see that team go back and forth and have controversy and a split locker room and all of that next year. It's just would be difficult for them. So anyway, we watch it with interest, and we'll see if it looks like they're going to keep Carson. And but if he has a bad game or two, man, he's going to be like, whoa, okay, I'm out, and that's unfortunate for them.
Thank you. And we also have Michael Irvin on the line with us as well for a question.
Hey, morning, Irv.
Our next question comes from Andrew Callahan with the Boston Herald. Andrew, you may ask your question.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the time here today. This is for both of you. Obviously, following Tom Brady up here in New England for years, there was always just one thing about his game in terms of, the connection with rookie receivers or second-year guys always took a little bit longer than expected. Obviously, it hasn't been the case here in Tampa. New coach, new system, everything there. But I'm curious, from both of your standpoints, what do you think has allowed him to connect, after with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, with guys like Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson so seamlessly this year, even sometimes late in critical playoff spots, to have that chemistry that maybe wasn't here in New England every year?
If I may, I don't think it happened overnight. I think it was a gradual thing. They were really inconsistent, I thought, early in the season. They were 7-4, 7-5, right, or whatever, and we were going like, whoa, boy, they really missed the preseason and training camp. They could have used it. And Tom came in learning a new system, and Kurt can talk about that because Kurt learned several new systems. It's not easy. I don't know how these guys do it. It's a completely new language, so it does take time mentally and physically to rhythm up with all these different guys with different routes and different timing. But right now, the last 6 or 7 games, man, it seems like they have found a good rhythm, and they're very dangerous, especially throwing the ball deep. For a while there, they couldn't complete a pass down the field, and now they're as good as anybody in the league. So Kurt can talk about learning a new system and how fast it takes to be efficient in it.
Yeah, I would say that, to me, when you're learning or getting comfortable with new guys, consistency is key, right? And especially for a guy that plays the game like Tom does, like I did, with anticipation, with, reading defenses and expecting your guys to be in certain places. So I think that's a huge part of, as Coach said, some of the ups and downs. When you watch the different receivers they have, I think one of the reasons he's had great success with Scotty Miller is because Scotty Miller, they ask him to do certain things, but he's very consistent with what he does route running. And so Tom's very comfortable with him. A guy like Mike Evans, if you watch him, he's a little more all over the place with his route running. A great route or a great player and can make a lot of plays, but a lot more of his game is based on feel than it's just definitive route running. And so I think that's why you see some good, some bad, that he's getting more and more comfortable with these guys and what they do. The guys that are more consistent will do what I expect them to do. The Gronks, hey, been around him, know exactly how he thinks. Tom's been, good with those guys. The other guys that may be a little more unorthodox, there's been, some challenges there. And we've seen that, all three of the interceptions last week were thrown to Mike Evans, right? And, there's just different things where it's like, oh, I think he's going to do this, but he does that. And so, Tom, you give him a guy that's going to do the same thing every time. I don't think he's going to have an issue whether he's a rookie or a 10-year vet. You give him guys that are a little more inconsistent with what they do, and it really messes with a guy that plays the game with timing. And I think we've seen that, throughout the year. And that becomes a big thing, for the Super Bowl is him and Mike Evans. When they're on the same page, they're big time playmakers. But when they're not on the same page or when one is thinking something and the other one does something different, we've seen that lead to, some mistakes by Tom Brady, or at least we'd call them mistakes by Tom Brady, or some throws by Tom Brady that are un-Brady-like, because I still think to this day they're trying to figure out one another and what they're going to do in each and every situation.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Dave Burkett with the Detroit Free Press. Dave, you may ask your question.
Morning, guys. Thanks for doing this. I see your smile, Kirk, because you know what's coming.
Yeah, exactly. We know where this one's going.
Well, so I got two questions. The first for you, for those of us up here in Detroit who maybe haven't watched, every game that Jared Goff has played, what's gone wrong since the Super Bowl year, and can he fix it? And then, Steve, I'd like to ask you if you could weigh in just on maybe, I don't know, is this finally the time the Lions get this thing right, and could Goff be a part of that if they do?
So yeah, I'll address Goff. And the thing about Jared Goff, if you go back and look, he has won a lot of games. He's played a lot of good football in the National Football League. And that's the first thing that you have to realize is that, yeah, whatever went sideways and they decided to part ways, but this guy's been very, very successful. I mean, I thought I saw at least some point in the season that since the time he came into the league, only Tom Brady has more wins than he had at some point during the season. So, let's look at that big picture wise first, is that this guy's played in the Super Bowl and he's won a lot of football games. With that being said, and this is a statement that accounts for probably 25 or more quarterbacks in the National Football League. All quarterbacks have some deficiencies, right? Outside of just the great ones that are at the top. And there are definitely some deficiencies with Jared Goff. And so if you go back and look at him in LA, when they do what they do in terms of they run the football, they play action, and they stay in that wheelhouse, when they're able to play games that way, Jared Goff is really, really good. When they're forced to play different ways and they're forced to play more drop back football, Jared Goff isn't as good. And I will just say that I don't believe the Rams system is great in the drop back game either. So that could be some of the reasons that Jared hasn't been as good in that part of the game. But I say all that to say, if you can build a team around what Jared Goff does well, and again, this relates to a lot of quarterbacks in this business, that you don't have a bunch of Tom Brady's that can just pick and choose and throw them in any system and they'll be great. There's not very many of those guys. So you have to build around your quarterback. And it's been shown in LA, when you can build around Jared Goff and what he does, you can have a lot of success. So that will be the challenge to me for the Detroit Lions is, they've got this draft collateral. They have to build this team. If they're going to keep Jared Goff and make him their guy, they have got to build this team around what he does well, and make sure that they stay in that as much as they possibly can, or they have the talent to live in that world as much as they possibly can. Because when they get out of that, Jared has shown that he's not as good in those other areas. But he's a winner. He has done well in this league, and I think he can continue to do well as long as you build a system around him that plays to his strengths.
So Dave, you mentioned Detroit thing, and this trade could be a win-win, okay, for both teams if Matthew Stafford stays healthy and has a couple of 3 good years of playing really excellent. He can be a real good one. We all know that, and he'll be playing with a great defense, right? He'll be playing with in some ways, a run-first offense. right? And he's never had that before, really. A great defense and run first. I mean, it's like, what? Because everybody's been relying on his arm for 12 years in Detroit, and he's had so many come from behind wins. So that could work out for the Rams. And Irv can comment on this too, because Irv was, Irv, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were around when Dallas did that Herschel Walker trade, right? And this is not exactly like that. It's not exactly like that, but it's a heck of a trade for Detroit to get a good quarterback that Kurt just mentioned, the second winningest guy in the league since he's been in there, plus a Super Bowl participant, Jared Goff, and couple of ones and a 3 and all these draft choices in the future. My God, when do you ever get a chance to have extra draft picks like that? This is the time for Detroit to, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but when we start drafting these guys, you got to hit on these guys. You got to find starters that show up in the Pro Bowl once in a while. And man, I think they can start turning the corner. This is a good deal for Detroit. And Jared Goff will be fine. He'll be playing in the Dome there at Ford Field, and he's a confident guy. I think he's going to play and with something to prove. And it's hopefully it'll be a win-win for both teams.
Yeah, Coach, and this is Michael Irvin here. I will speak to this in this sense. When we did pick up all of the picks from the Herschel Walker trade, that's one of the things I do remember us talking about, and talking about like, okay, let's make sure we get the right kind of guys in here. We were not just talking physically gifted, but the mentality. The kind of guys that want to do something special, want to turn things around, want to change the narratives. And sometimes, if I'm in that situation, I'm going in looking for guys that kind of want to make their own mark and try to bring them in. And I'll take a guy a little less talented, but has the right attitude, because I know I'm building something. I want a guy that's going to be vibrant, always on the practice field, always lifting everybody up, because you're trying to turn something around. And it can work out a great way in Detroit if they know how to go and find those guys like Coach you're talking about, not just physically gifted guys, but the right mentality guys.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Joe Fan with NBC Sports Northwest. Joe, you may ask your question.
Hey, Kurt and Mooch, just curious what you guys thought of Russell Wilson's second half of the season, and maybe, his regression, his slump, and maybe how fresh blood on the coaching staff with Shane Waldron might help him to get out of that. And if there's any sort of element, even in year 10, of you don't know what you don't know. And then Irv, I was curious if you could just comment on DK Metcalf, where he's at in year 2, and what it's going to take for him to continue to evolve into what he hopes will be, become where he's one of the best receivers in this game.
Yeah, I'll jump in on Russell. Well, I mean, obviously it's it's such a hard contrast, because the beginning of the year, I mean, the dude was on fire. I mean, he was playing as well as we've ever seen anybody play the quarterback position for those first however many games, when he was on pace, and he was tearing it up to set a league record. So there's obviously a big contract between that and what he was at the end of the year. And it's hard to always put your finger on it when you watch film and try to figure out, okay, why and what was going so right early, and then what was going so wrong late. But I think one thing with Russell is he continues to evolve as a player. And he's one of those guys. I remember Mooch sharing a story with us about Brett Favre, when he had a nice clean pocket and he ran out of the pocket to get outside. And Mooch asked him, what are you doing? Why are you leaving the pocket? He goes, I just feel more comfortable out there. And sometimes I feel that's Russell Wilson, is that he feels more comfortable playmaking and outside the pocket. And sometimes that comes back to haunt him. And I think we saw it specifically against the Rams the couple times that they played him. And of course, you've always got to be aware of Aaron Donald. But there's sometimes, to me, he gets impatient in the pocket. Early in the year, he seemed to stay in there, read things, make plays. Now, maybe that was first guy was open, things were working better. It was easier for him. But I think sometimes he gets impatient in the pocket and doesn't trust what he's seeing, or just feels more comfortable in another place. And I still believe to this day, as great as Russell has been, that's the thing that will put him over the top, is when he gets more comfortable in a system. Now, maybe part of it was a system. Maybe the new situation helps him to grow in that area. But we know how dynamic he is and what an unbelievable playmaker he is and how he wins games for his team. When he gets a little bit better inside the pocket and more comfortable making those reads and staying in there to go through his progressions, that's to me going to be the icing on the cake for Russell Wilson. And really where he needs to go is to trust himself inside the pocket and reading plays and not having to get outside and make every play from that position, because we've seen it around the league. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. It is hard to live in that world, specifically when you're playing against good teams at playoff time. So you have to be able to make the layups or make the right decisions inside the pocket and then be special a handful of times throughout the game. And that's kind of what I saw with Russell Wilson later in the year, and where I just think that last piece of improvement for him to really set him, apart from, he's already set apart in so many ways, but to really put him with those guys that are complete, probably like a guy like a Patrick Mahomes that can really do both equally well.
So during the season, I did an interview with Russ, and he was playing so well at the time, and I asked him the question. I said, are you an MVP candidate? Or I said, we think you are. And I think I jinxed him, because after that, it started going the other way a little bit. But I learned this in Green Bay when Ron Wolf was the general manager. He says, we have to build our team to win the division. And it's like, that's interesting, because there's 3 or 4 other teams. We had different divisions then. But think about that. And Kurt mentioned this. When the Seahawks played the Rams, that's not a good matchup for them, because the Rams defensive front and their pass rush is really too good for the Seahawks to protect. Okay. And then and Irv can comment a little bit on this, because Jalen Ramsey pretty much locked down DK Metcalf for most of those 2 games. And so you gotta be able to beat the Rams or beat the 49ers when they're healthy, when they have all those pass rushers. So to me, the weaknesses did show up in the back 9 for the Seahawks. I believe they have to improve. Russell Wilson is one of the very, very top quarterbacks in this league. I don't think there's much debate on that, but I think they've got to improve up front with their offensive line and be able to protect him a little bit better, be able to be a little bit more consistent in the run game. They had a lot of running back injuries this year, as you know. They were in and out of that lineup. But I think they're going to make a concerted effort to shore up their offensive line so they can hold up against the Rams, hold up against the Niners when they're healthy. And I think that's going to be the key for them getting back and going deep in the playoffs.
And let me just jump top on that real quick with Mooch here, is that, I've often said that's one of the hardest things to do as a quarterback, is to trust the guys up front when there's times that they don't give you a reason to trust them. And so for a guy like Russell Wilson, that could be a huge part of what I was talking about, is that sometimes you lose trust in the guys up front and you say, okay, I'm going to be better by just escaping and getting out here. But sometimes you got to trust those guys when they give you no reason to trust them. And that's what you have to do as a pocket passer. And so, fascinating that coach says that could be a huge part of why we saw some of what we saw later in the year.
Yeah, and as far as Metcalf goes, you guys, I thought it was interesting as you watched those games last year. Metcalf is a phenomenal young talent, phenomenal young receiver. But boy, he has some battles when he has Ramsey and Patrick Peterson right there in the division, and these are 2 big guys, and they're always trying to get up on him and because they know he's not great in transitions. So maybe, like Kurt said, some of the situations that they're changing help. When I watch the Green Bay film, that first time they get down on the down on the goal line, they run that little reverse motion, bring Devontae Adams back and throws him a little easy touchdown. I was like, where's some of this stuff for DK Metcalf when he's going up against these guys? Right after Devontae Adams scored that touchdown, you saw Jalen Ramsey jumping up and down, getting all upset. And it took me back to what Norv Turner used to always say when he said, I can't let their best guy take out our best guy because it messes with our whole offense. It messes with our whole offensive mindset. So we can't let their best guy take out our best guy. And when Green Bay did that little thing, it was a 1-yard route. Devontae Adams scored a touchdown. Jalen Ramsey jumping up and down. Everybody on Green Bay's sideline gets confidence that our best guy can beat their best guy. And I said all year, Kurt, when we talked about Russell Wilson cooking, I said, man, he's cooking some great meals, but I love to see him not put together all these great meals, just drop off some little appetizers. Get DK something easy, just like that. Just drop off a few appetizers. Some little 1-yarder that he can get his confidence up when he's going up against those kinds of guys. Those guys know you want to go up the field with DK Metcalf, so they're playing him that way. And Kurt and I talked. Kurt talked about a lot of times. Sometimes Russell just went right, just hey, didn't even look his way because he feels like their best guy's taking out our best guy. And they do have to fix that by giving him some easy victories in those situations, just like Green Bay gave Devontae Adams.
Thank you. Our next question comes from John Crick with the Toronto Sun. John, you may ask your question.
Hey guys, first Michael, you're picking a team and you can pick the receivers, not just wide receivers, but all the pass catchers, tight ends, running backs off both teams. Who would be your top 5 and in what order? And then for Steve, with offensive line kind of patchwork for the Chiefs with Fisher out left tackle, they're moving around again. Would you test them early with more blitzing than teams might normally want to do against Patrick?
Good, Mike.
That's a great question. Now, and we talking pass catchers. This game is loaded with pass catchers, and we will do tell over tape, which means which way would you go? If we're talking pure receivers in this game, you have to just say wow and look at the talent that Tampa has. But when you add in the tight end and so call it pass catchers, everything changes. Everything changes. Travis Kelce and what Travis Kelce does. And I always said it's much more difficult for me to stop that tight end wide receiver that's all pro, that great combination of a tight end and a receiver than it is to stop 2 great receivers. I really think because that tight end just gives you such a mismatch. And Travis Kelce is such a mismatch. I don't care how you try to play it. He's so great at what he does. Kurt was just talking about being a friendly receiver. When you watch Travis Kelce, he's such a friendly tight end. You know what he's doing prior to what he's doing. And him and Patrick Mahomes have such a great connection. When we start talking pass catchers, I have to put Kansas City tops right there because of adding Travis Kelce in there and then come back with Tampa. Now you ask about, man, the top 5, you're talking about across the league. Or if we're talking about these 2 guys, I would look.
Yeah, just the 2 teams.
What's that?
Just these 2 teams.
The top 5 pass catchers in this game?
Yep.
Oh my God, yeah. We to order that, and it's hard for me to put them in order because I think they have different skill sets. That's what makes Tampa, I think, very viable because they have there's such great diversity at the wide receiver position. They got a big guy, they got Godwin, Antonio Brown can do it all, and then Scotty Miller can get you deep and even Tyler Johnson making some plays. So I love their diversity. If I top 5 these, most fear, I would certainly have to start with Tyreek Hill just because of what he did. And probably in this game, I would go Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and then Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and Chris Godwin are the top 5 that I would lay in that role.
Thanks.
Okay, so is it John? You said your name was John?
Yeah.
In Toronto?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was a guest coach for Bob Obilovich and for the Toronto Argonauts.
Where are you?
Obi?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm the only guy on this call that played in the Canadian Football League for 2 weeks. 2 weeks for the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Ooh.
Anyway, I thought I'd throw it in there.
I didn't know they ran option up in Canada. Did they run the
Well, they
option
didn't.
up
That's
there?
why I didn't. Okay. All right. That's enough out of you, Kurt. And so listen, let's talk about the offensive line for the Chiefs. So this is what's making me nervous, guys. I'm just telling you that right now. If you look for strengths, and they're everywhere on these teams, but you look for weaknesses, there's a glaring concern in my mind. If I were a fan or a coach, all right, it's the offensive line for the Chiefs. Start off with, you go to the beginning of the season, their two starting tackles are very, very good. Eric Fisher from Central Michigan, that was Andy Reid's first pick when he came there, all right? He's the left tackle. He might not be Orlando Pace or Anthony Munoz, but this guy's really a good left tackle, all right? He's been steady as they come. And Mitchell Schwartz, he got hurt during the season, so he had to be replaced. So they're going to be with new tackles. Well, Mike Remmers, luckily they have, is a veteran guy. He's been plugged in over there at the right tackle. He's done a good job, all right? Now, here goes Fisher out with an Achilles, right? So they got to take Mike Remmers and put him over at the left tackle. And when you do that, you got to change your stance. You go from a right-handed stance to a left-handed stance, and all of a sudden it's a little different. Luckily, they have a veteran doing that. And then they're going to take their right guard, Andrew Wiley, and push him out there to tackle. That's hard to do. I mean, you go from guard where you got people on both sides of you to out there to tackle where you're on an island against Shaq Barrett or JPP. And so you got some concerns there. And then Stefan Wisniewski comes in and plays guard. So they've got three positions that are new, that are different, that are maybe a little under practiced against a pretty darn salty front. And so that's my eyes are going to be on that offensive line, because Patrick Mahomes, like Kurt mentioned earlier, you got to be able to trust your protectors. So you're not like conscious about where's my pressure coming from, because this is not a good matchup. And so they might have to chip and help a little bit and get the ball out quickly because of this offensive line shuffle.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Doug Farrar with USA Today. Doug, you may ask your question.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for doing this. Kurt, I want to ask you about the Kansas City secondary, because I just watched your most recent video this morning, which was great. And they play a ton of dime. It's, big nickel all over the place. They're doing all this stuff. I guess a couple of questions. How they make everything look similar at the start of the play, and then they roll into different coverages. It seems like they're doing that a lot. How do you handle that as a veteran quarterback? And then Richard Sherman was telling a story on his podcast about last year's Super Bowl, where the one guy the 49ers offense couldn't key on last year was Tyrann Mathieu, because they couldn't place him, if you know what I mean. It's like, here, he's there, he's everywhere. And both of you certainly can address this, but what have you seen in the challenges specifically from Steve Spagnuolo's secondary, which is not getting talked about a lot, but it kind of seems like could be a big mover in this game?
No doubt. I think they do some great things with their disguise. And you talked about the versatility of their players, guys like Tyrann Mathieu and Sorensen. These are guys that can come down and play in the box. They're guys that can play on the back end. They can cover man. They can cover, main receivers or main tight ends in man. And so having those kinds of guys gives you a lot of flexibility. They'll go 4 down, they'll go 3 down. They'll give you a lot of different looks. And so it's really important to be able to identify, to know what the keys are within that defense, and be able to see that and process it all in short periods of time and make the right decisions. On top of that, they have a lot of confidence in their corners. And so their corners will get up and press and play man-to-man, press man-to-man a lot. And that is, that's a problem for a quarterback, because if you're going to bring blitzes, what we're always looking for as quarterbacks is that quick hitter. A corner's playing 8 yards off, boom, I can hit something. I can hit a 5-yard hitch. I can hit a quick route there, and it makes my job easier. When those guys are pressed on the outside and they don't give you anything easy, that adds another dimension to the difficulty of beating pressure. And so you say, what do you do? I think you formation teams like that, right? Because they want to give you all these looks and make it look like something. Well, you change the formations a lot. You spread them out a little bit, and it simplifies what they do. You speed up your process, whether that's no huddle or getting up to the line of scrimmage and snapping the football. So the faster you can go, the more a defense goes, okay, we can't disguise this, because that's one of the things I think the Chiefs do really, really well is, you probably saw it on the video, they love to go blitz zero. And so they will make certain things look like they're going blitz zero, and then all of a sudden they run back into a coverage, and then vice versa with their different blitzes. And so you have to try to force them out of being able to hold their disguise longer and longer, because that's where it gets tougher and tougher. When you're going down and you're trying to decipher exactly what they're doing and they're not showing their hand, man, it's a lot to think about. And they gave Brady all kinds of fits early in that game last time, earlier in the year, with the pressures, and they picked him off and they got in his face. Later in the game, you saw that Tampa started to get the ball out quicker, and they had quicker answers, and they were able to, sometimes they released 5 guys and just said, okay, Tom, find the guy that's soft and get him the football and make them tackle us. And so that is going to be the cat and mouse. And that is, how you try to attack those things. But it's not easy. I love what Spags does. I love the looks. And Tyron is such a versatile player that that you do have to know where he's at and what he's doing, because he's such an instinctual guy. And I've always said that, to me, I'd rather play against a great physical player than against somebody that has great instincts.
Right.
Because someone that has great instincts, you have to know where they're at. You have to know what they're looking at, because oftentimes, they're either reading routes or they're reading the quarterback's eyes, and you have to know where they're at and what their responsibility is on every play, because, they can just do something that's unorthodox simply because they're basing it off of instincts. Whereas a quarterback, you say, okay, he's supposed to play here. And most guys, you can just chalk it up, he's going to play there. Guys like Tyron, they don't do that. They understand the game so well that they do things that are a little bit different. And you always got to have that in the back of your mind.
They're the worst people to play against, Kurt. That's what it is.
No doubt.
They're the worst. Anytime a DB is playing that way, like, dude, you don't even supposed to be here. They're the worst people in the world. And they kill you. You're logically thinking the game. Okay, cover 3, this is where you're supposed to be. Cover 2, this is where. And these guys are showing up. Like, what the hell are you doing? This is man. It run you crazy. Especially the good ones that study. And they're playing your tendencies with their unorthodox ways. It does cause confusion, and Tyron is one of the best at it.
Thank you. Next question comes from Rich Samini with ESPN. Rich, you may ask your question.
Good morning, guys. This is for all 3, Jet-related question. Do you think Sam Darnold can be fixed by the new coaching staff? And if you were the Jets, would you go all in on Deshaun Watson?
Oof. Hey, I don't know what to tell you about Deshaun Watson. That's kind of a tough situation down there in Houston, where he kind of wants out, and it's been a difficult time. And he's such a great player. And, I think we've all felt that Sam Darnold was a good player coming out of college. And he's been victimized a little bit by playing with a team that hasn't really surrounded him with a lot of great talent and whatever the reasons. So, I still believe that Sam Darnold can be a starting quarterback and a productive quarterback in this league. I think Robert Saleh is going to do a heck of a job over there. Good coach. He's going to do its best to try to upload that roster as fast as possible, because it's a pretty darn competitive division going forward. But I haven't given up hope on Sam Darnold. I think he can be a good player in this league.
Coach, what you said when you started talking about that division going forward, you can still believe in Sam Darnold. Darnold can get it done, and the right coaching staff can bring the best out of him. But if you can get a Deshaun Watson, you go all in on a Deshaun Watson, because he's just a different kind of guy. He's a different kind of playmaker. And if you can have that different type of playmaker in New York, oh my God, it could be crazy. You could get that talent, that kid in New York. So absolutely, to answer your question, both of them would be yes. I still believe you can salvage or save whatever word you use, Sam. But if you can get Deshaun Watson, I believe you go all in to get Deshaun Watson.
I mean, to that real quick. I mean, when you look at what Deshaun did down there on a losing team, usually when you're playing from behind, you take chances, you risk, you force the ball, you do whatever you have to do. Your statistics are awful because you're throwing a lot of picks and whatever. That guy could be offensive player of the year. I mean, he was sensational on a team that was losing and it was hopeless sometimes, and he still played excellent football. It was so impressive to watch that kid play. And I just man alive, talk about a Herschel Walker trade. If that guy gets traded somewhere, it will be for a boatload of picks, because you're going to have to mortgage the future to grab a guy like that. Maybe it's worth it.
Our next question comes from Paul Domowitch with the Philadelphia Daily News. Paul, you may ask your question.
Yeah, this question's for Kurt. Kurt, getting back to Carson Wentz for a second, I have great respect for your ability to break down quarterbacks. If he is indeed fixable, what needs to be fixed? His decision-making, his mechanics, his tendency to hold on to the ball, all of the above. I mean, what are you looking at when you see him right now?
Yes, D, all of the above. Yeah, I think there's some deficiencies in different areas. I've kind of documented it a little bit on certain things over the last couple of years, that there's some technique deficiencies that I think really hurt him and hurt his consistency as a thrower. I think there's some deficiencies in what he's seeing on the field, where his eyes are going. And I'll say too, one of the hardest things to do is to watch film and fully understand A, what a team is trying to do, B, what a player is coached to do, and then C, what exactly he's seeing on a particular play. But the way I always break down film is I look at the concept and say, okay, what would I do? What would, in my mind, feeling like I'm pretty smart from a quarterback standpoint on how I would read stuff, what would I do on this particular play? And I think there's a number of times where I can't quite figure out what Carson is doing on certain plays. So I think he needs more, definition on what he's looking at and why he's working through progressions and doing some of those things. The hard part about holding the ball too long, I think you could say this about Deshaun Watson. I think you could say this about Russell Wilson. All these guys that are such great playmakers. And, at the height of what Carson was doing, back in 2017, he was the ultimate playmaker. The reason that he was, MVP of our league before he got injured was because he was doing crazy special things, ad-libbing and making those special plays. And so that becomes a hard balance. I never had to deal with that, right? I was never anything that I had to worry about. I was getting the ball out of my hands as quick as possible. But these guys that are such great playmakers, it's that balance between, okay, when do I throw the ball away? When do I get it out of my hands? And when do I try to be special on top of that? And so I don't really know how you coach that, or if you can truly coach that out of the great playmakers. But I do believe in those other two areas, there are some deficiencies there that need to be corrected for us to really truly see what Carson Wentz can be at this level.
Our next question comes from Hal Habib with the Palm Beach Post. Hal, you may ask your question.
Hi. Hello, Michael. This question is for anyone who wants to address it. Actually, two-pronged question regarding the Dolphins. I know what you said a minute ago about Watson going all in if you get a chance to get him. If you're Miami, do you do that as well? Or do you say, wait a minute, we've got Tua, let's see what we have in Tua? And secondly, we just learned that the Dolphins are going to go with co-offensive coordinators in 2021. And I want to see if any of you have any reaction to that, whether you think, yeah, that could work, or whether that gives you pause.
I'll go on the coach's situation. When I coached for the Rams, I was at the Rams before Kurt Warner was. All right. So when I was just a young coach,
You're
coaches,
old.
we
You're
had
old.
we had two. I guess you'd call them offensive coordinators because we had a run game coordinator and a pass game coordinator, and they actually shared the play calling. It was crazy. Bruce Snyder and Lou Erber. So it's been done before. It's different. It's not very often that you share that responsibility. Somebody's got to be the play caller in my mind and get a rhythm going and set plays up for the next series or whatever. So that'll be fun to watch to see how that works out. But I mean, Brian Flores has committed, it seemed, to Tua. And it was kind of an interesting dilemma watching Fitz go in there and play so well. Kurt knows him. I mean, the guy he's got 9 lives and he just keeps playing well. It's unbelievable. But then it's like, all right, Tua, you're still our starter. And so there's been a real commitment towards Tua. He's shown at times to be a very, very promising young, good quarterback. And then at times he showed us that he was a rookie. And so, like Irv said, though, if anybody gets a chance to grab a Deshaun Watson, you have to think about that because he's special. But if chances are they're going to be with Tua next year, I think he can be developed into a heck of a player. I had a guy like him named Steve Young, left-handed guy, similar size in mobility. Steve was probably a little faster, but I think they can move Tua around so he can see a little bit better. I wouldn't play him from the pocket so much. I'd move him more, change the launch point, but I think he can be a good quarterback in this league.
Irv, you're on mute.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. The dilemma here is it's when we talk Sam, we say, okay, we've seen a lot of Sam. We've seen enough to try to get a measurement and an understanding of where his ceiling may be. When we're looking and talking about Tua, we just seen a little, and we were probably pretty close to his floor. Now, for Miami, man, I thought Coach Flores did a brilliant job this year. It was a brilliant job. He realizes his team is better than they thought, and if we keep moving forward, and we have to come all the way back to pick up this rookie, we're going to throw ourselves in a situation. So let's start getting him some play right now. Let's start getting him some play and switching him in and out and trying to get him up to speed so he can have a quarterback position that matches the talent that he has that's ready to win right now all around. Now, here's the dilemma to all of this. As I said, we haven't seen a whole bunch of Tua. So we're seeing closer to Tua's floor than his ceiling. Now, you see you see Tua every day in practice. Do you see where his ceiling can go, even though we're looking at his floor? Or you have to say, wow, what will I have to give up? Because my concern was my team is leaving my quarterback. Now, what will I have to give? Can I give something up? Can I give draft picks and all that stuff up? Pretty much keep my team and not give up any players that I got to give up that makes a difference on my team. Keep my team where it is and then bring over Deshaun Watson. Well, you have to look at that real hard because that puts them back. That puts them right in the thick of everything with the rest of that team they have around Tua right now. If that team was around Deshaun Watson, oh yeah, that would be a difference maker. But it depends on what you would have to give up to make that decision. If I have to give up those guys I have on my defense, all of those guys, then that's going to be a hard decision. That's going to be a hard decision. But if I have to give up Tua and all the draft picks I got, then I may be more willing to do that and say now, let's go right now. Instead of being ready in another year or two, we're ready right now with Deshaun Watson.
Next question comes from Ryan Dunleavy with the New York Post. Ryan, you may ask your question.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. You hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
We're good.
Okay, great. I have two questions. One for Steve on Bruce Arians, no risk it, no biscuit. What do you think of that? It's almost like, to me, like the NFL is catching up to a 65-year-old guy who's been doing it his whole career, because now it seems like everybody realizes you have to play aggressive. What do you think of Bruce Arians and that philosophy? And then I have one for about the Giants separately.
Well, I mean, obviously it got him to the Super Bowl, and Jameis Winston threw for over 5,000 yards last year. Tom, not quite that much, but he cut the interceptions down. It's just his philosophy. Trust me, there's no one system that is the top system. I mean, you can make it work, whether you're, in a digit system like Irv played in, Don Coryell or West Coast or Wishbone or Biscuit system. I mean, if you got the players to do it, then it can work. And so he's made it work. And he's 68 years old. He and Andy Reid, 68, 62. That's the oldest combination of head coaches in the Super Bowl ever. And we're playing in a league with a lot of good, young, offensive-minded coaches. But that's the old timers that got to the Super Bowl. But I think the job that Bruce has done is excellent. He went out and made a commitment to go get Tom, but then he didn't stop there. He said, "This is our window of opportunity. Let's go get Gronk. Let's go get Fournette. Let's go get AB. Let's do whatever the heck we have to do and try to win one this year or next year. Just think how good they're going to be next year when they get to practice in the offseason. Holy geez." And so I think Bruce has done a great job of relating to his players, different generation, but they get him and he gets them. And so I have the utmost respect for both of these coaches.
And then Kurt and Michael, if you could weigh in here on the Giants, do you look at, so Juju Smith-Schuster, franchise tag aside, Juju's a free agent, Godwin's a free agent, Galladay's a free agent, Allen Robinson's a free agent. Do you look at it and say the Giants need to go get a number one receiver for Daniel Jones? Is that something that's a must for them this year? And if there's one of those guys you particularly like for the Giants, who is it?
Go ahead, Irv.
Boy, do they need to go get another receiver? Yes. And I know you said number one receiver, and even the guys that you mentioned, the Juju's, we've gone back and forth to appear number one. There's so many things I think Juju do great. That Galladay, that call right there, I would, well, if you can get that kid, absolutely you try to get that kid, because I think he would make a huge difference in giving the Giants something that they need from a wide receiver position. So they do need to pick up a receiver. I would love to see them get a true pure number one receiver. And out of the group, the Allen Robinson, I don't know if you mentioned his name. Allen Robinson, I think he's another guy that may be coming open. But a guy like that, a guy like Galladay would be big in New York.
From my standpoint, yeah. I mean, any quarterback is going to want definitive number one receiver. I think without a question, the Giants can use more help on the outside. So yeah, I mean, it would be definitely a priority to go get as many weapons as I can for Daniel Jones and continue to surround him as a young quarterback with playmakers and, continue to build that offensive line to protect him because he's shown signs of being really good at times in this league. But you look at, I think, the Giants from top to bottom, with especially Saquon not, having played as much, these last couple of years. They don't necessarily have those household names of guys that you can count on, or, the Michael Irvin's the number one guy that you can depend on as a quarterback. So I definitely think that's a priority for this football team.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Andrew, I gotta jump off and get ready for TV.
Okay, we will take two final questions for Mooch and Irv. Our next question comes from Adam Beasley with the Miami Herald. Adam, you may ask your question.
Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time. I have a Tom Brady legacy question. It seems like for years he's been compared to the Marinos and the Elways and the greats. If he wins on Sunday, is it time to start comparing him to the Jordans and the Alis and the greatest in sports history?
Go ahead, Irv.
I listen. My whole thought is this, and I know we keep talking about the Jordans and all of these guys, even Ali. These are for me. He's already there. Those are sports that have individual isolated success. Jordan gets the ball from one rim and take it to the other and shoots. He does it all by himself. He has that ability, and in that sport, you can control more because you can have individual isolated success. And golf and baseball, all of that stuff. You can have individual isolated success in football. So I don't care how great you are, it doesn't matter unless you get everybody around you to play great, or you can't be successful. So we keep saying, does Tom now deserve to be with those guys? What I'm telling you, Tom deserves to be on top of all of that because of how hard it is to win in this sport as opposed to those other sports. You get a great talent in those other sports, you can damn near win a championship with just that great talent. You can get the greatest talent in this sport. And if you can't get those other guys to play with you, all you got is talent, and you will not win championships. Tom Brady has taken it beyond what he does. He gets the best out of these guys. He's lifted this team and has this team playing in a Super Bowl. The only thing that we can see comparable, as you talk about all these other greats, that you can place up there anywhere near Tom, is probably LeBron James, because he's gone to other places and turned them. Though they had great talent, he still had to get them to work with him and made them a champion. There's talent, physical talent, and then there's the talent that you have to not just do the X's and O's, but to control and work and manage the people. The people. That's what makes Tom Brady above a lot of those things you are talking about right now. I don't know why we're waiting to put him up there or waiting on him to win this game to put him up there. He should already be up there according to what it takes to win at this game as opposed to those other games. And I love them all. But they're just not interconnected and interdependent on each other like football is.
That's a good answer, Irv. Can I use some of that later? That's good because, and Irv is right. I mean, other greats, you're talking about different sports. You're talking about boxing, or even if you talk tennis, basketball with 5 players. You're right. And Tom Brady has to interdependent on 40 or 53 other guys. I mean, if you're a great player and you have 2 offensive linemen who aren't very good, you can't show that you're a great player. And so it's been unbelievable to go to 10 Super Bowls out of 21 years. That is ridiculous. That speaks to his greatness. Yes, it speaks to the Patriots' greatness on surrounding him and then putting him on a good team now too in Tampa. But he does make everybody else better. And so, I mean, he just played in his 14th championship game, okay, which is a semifinal game. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played in 14. And so and Bill Russell won 11 championships. But that's basketball, and not to look down my nose at basketball, but being a football player, you're one of many more guys on the field that you have to depend on for your success. And so, yeah, he's in there. 7th Super Bowl that he could win. This is crazy stuff. It's not going to happen again. And we compare he and Patrick Mahomes, and everybody goes, yeah, well, Patrick Mahomes, he's a good young player. He'll get more Super Bowls. You don't know that. Dan Marino went to one early, didn't go back. You don't know that. And so this is really unprecedented, and it's probably not going to be duplicated in our lifetimes. So just put him up on that pedestal.
And on that Patrick Mahomes comparison, I mean, I understand as we project, and that's our job, we have to be like Sears and project what could happen. But just me, and I love what I'm seeing out of Patrick Mahomes. But in another 5-6 years, whatever, when Tyreek Hill is not Tyreek Hill, I want to see Patrick Mahomes continue to win with other guys and other players that just fit in. like Tom Brady has. You know, hey, okay, let's walk. Hey, you know, Ken Albert. Oh, I got Julian Edelman. Okay, Randy Moss, you're going. Okay, I'll win with these guys. Oh, it's easy. It's easy for us to sit here and say, "Oh, Patrick will do this," as we see what Patrick has right now. But those guys aren't going to be around long enough for Patrick to catch Tom Brady. Now, Patrick may play around long enough, but I guarantee you Tyreek Hill ain't gonna run like that for the next 10 years. He's going to start slowing down. Travis Kelce's going to start slowing down, and it's going to take Patrick the next 10 years at least to try to get near Tom Brady. Just watch this thing. Can you still do it with other talent? Because Tom Brady did it with other talent, and we don't know that Patrick Mahomes can do that just yet.
Thank you. And with that, we've run out of time. So that concludes today's media availability. Thank you to Michael, Steve, and Kurt for your time today. And thank you, media, for joining. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Super Bowl week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.